for our division, here to welcome you officially and to introduce the speaker for today. So, Prof Liz, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you. I mean, the fact that Teresh is not available gives me the sort of privilege of doing this on his behalf, but also to participate a bit more actively of this opportunity. I think that these type of activities are very important at the university that takes seriously teaching and learning. And I want to thank my colleagues in the division for actually keeping this going. There is nothing as important in relation to teaching and learning as to being able to think theoretically and critically about what it is that one does, and to do that within the specific field in which we actually profess as academics. So thank you to you, Karen, and everybody who is involved in organizing this. So now it is my privilege to introduce our speaker, who, as you can see in that slide, is going to talk about opportunity, meaning, and choice, which are very interesting concepts, all of them, and proposing a pedagogy of occupational justice. You have a very interesting track record, Professor Plastow. It tells me here that you are a professor and associate professor and undergraduate program coordinator in occupational therapy, which is a very interesting discipline in itself. In our faculty of health sciences, and I'm very interested in the fact that you're also a distinguished teacher. And moreover, it says here that you have a double fellowship, which is quite remarkable. Yes. So, and moreover, your work in Bishop Lavis is very, very important for a university that talks about transformation and social interactions and responsibility. So I'm very much looking forward to what you have to share with us. And I hope that everybody is going to be very active in asking you questions and being part of the conversation. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm struggling to get my video on with the presentation at the same time. So I am going to resist the urge to stop sharing the presentation, put my video on and go back. And I'll put my video on at the end instead. So good afternoon, colleagues and guests. It's a great pleasure that I'm presenting some of the work involved in my teaching fellowship today. So this is the work of the second Stellenbosch University Teaching Fellowship that I was awarded, which started at the beginning of last year in 2023. So I just want to, in particular, welcome some of my international collaborators on the Snapshot project who are joining me today. We have an international delegation visiting this week from Sweden and Switzerland, and also are joined by colleagues from UWC, looking at intersectionality and its impact on people.
Nicola, you have disappeared. You've frozen, and oh, there we can hear you. Okay. No.
Karen, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but you are breaking up and your picture is freezing.
That's very strange because I'm plugged into the university network.
Maybe it was just a temporary glitch. Please carry on. It seems to be fine now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah, so I just wanted to say I also want to acknowledge the work of my colleagues, Professor Jennifer Nikak, who is lead supervisor for one of our PhD students, Louw. And Helena's work is focusing on transformative learning experiences that are also occupationally just. So it looks like, Karen, does it look like the sound is still coming and going?
Sorry, may I make the suggestion that You switch off your camera and let representation run. I'm sure that we can try and manage that way, because it looks unstable. I can see the little cinemijiggy here saying that it is unstable.
Okay, let me just do that. Okay. All right, let's try again. Apologies, colleagues. Okay, Karen, is that a bit more stable? Is that better?
That is better. Thank you very much, Nicola.
Okay, all right. So I was just saying that I want to acknowledge the work of my colleague, Professor Lana van Niekerk, who is lead supervisor for our PhD student, Helena Louw. And Helena's PhD is focusing on transformative learning experiences that are occupationally just. I also wanted to acknowledge the work of Dr. Fazlun Adams, who is in our division, because her critical perspectives have informed my thinking of occupational justice and education. So, as with any well-designed teaching and learning activity, we need to know what our learning outcomes are. So by the end of this presentation, I would like you to be able to define the concept of occupational justice that I think some of you may not be familiar with. We're going to analyze the intersection between occupational justice, other social justice pedagogies, and service learning. We're going to hear about my application of what I think is an occupational justice pedagogy in one service learning placement at Bishop Lavis from Stellenbosch University. And then I want to use the end of this presentation to evaluate this idea or my thinking of the concept of an occupational justice pedagogy and whether this is something that is worth taking forward. Okay, so as a start, I would like you to think about one activity that has meaning and purpose in a student's everyday life. So now I'm going to ask for a volunteer, please, to put their sound on and to tell us what that activity is and why it's meaningful and purposeful to a student. So I can't see the chat or hands up, so can I ask one brave person to please help me out on this one?
Okay, I'll go. It's Karen Wolf here.
Thank you.
Nicola, when the question appeared on the screen, I immediately thought coming together with other students for a similarish purpose. That's the activity.
So that's kind of social connectedness and social interaction between the students. And what are some of the other things that they are doing while they are socializing or connecting with each other?
They're ostensibly learning, but they're not necessarily learning in the way that we think they're learning.
And what else are they doing?
Drinking coffee.
Yes, drinking coffee. Anything else? So they might be reading, they might be having their lunch, they might be enjoying nature. They might be getting from one place on campus to another place on campus. Okay, so there are many activities that our students do within their everyday life as a student. So my question then is, do they have the right to do those activities? So do students have the right to connect with each other and to socially participate? Do they have the right to eat their lunch? Do they have the right to drink a cup of coffee? Do they have the right to read a book? And would it be an injustice if someone or something stopped them from doing those things? So as an occupational therapist, my answer to those two questions is yes, we do have a right to do the things that are meaningful and purposeful in our everyday lives. And it is an injustice if there are things that stop us from doing those activities. So occupational justice then is the concept of having the right to participate in a diverse range of meaningful occupations to meet your needs and achieve your potential. So as an occupational therapist, I use the word occupation in a slightly different way to what it is commonly used. So we usually use the word occupation either to refer to people's work activities, or we use it as a word that symbolizes the occupation of a land or a country, so somebody else taking control of something. But within occupational therapy, we refer to occupations as the everyday activities that people want to do, that they need to do, that they have to do, and that are meaningful and purposeful to them. So what I often say to the students is basic activities of our daily lives, like going to the toilet, are not something that we think of as being meaningful and purposeful, but it becomes very meaningful and very purposeful when you have an illness or injury that stops you from doing it, because it's not very pleasant having somebody else taking you to the toilet. Okay, so if we come to this idea of occupational justice and occupational rights, the World Federation of Occupational Therapists 2019 position statement on human rights emphasizes that when choosing occupations, people should be able to make those choices without any pressure, force, coercion, or threat. They should also not experience any risk to their safety, their human dignity, or their sense of equity when they are participating in their diverse and meaningful occupations. So according to the World Federation, a just and inclusive society will protect people's rights to choice, equitable opportunity, meaningful participation, and balance. So in this context, balance is about having the right variety of things to do, so not too many things to do and not too few things to do, as well as the amount of time that your activities or your occupations fill. So we don't want to be spending too much time doing nothing. We also don't want to be so busy that we are running off our feet and not able to do all the things that we need to do. So an occupational justice perspective acknowledges that each person has different needs, wishes, and habits, and that people need different opportunities to use their talents and to flourish in their daily lives. Nelson and Townsend describe occupational justice as a justice of difference. They argue that social policies, structural forms of governance like division of labor and occupational classifications, and other factors like social inclusion, privilege, entitlement, influence how power is used to either restrict the participation of populations and individuals or enable it. So when we're talking about justice, we also need to recognize that there are then forms of injustice. So when we're talking about occupational justice, we identify a range of different instances of occupational injustice. And on this slide, you can just see 4 examples that were really identified at the beginning of or the emergence of the literature around occupational justice. So these include alienation, which is a lack of meaning and ability to achieve your potential. Occupational deprivation is having a lack of opportunities within your environment to participate. Occupational marginalization is understood as experiencing a lack of autonomy and choice in what you do. And imbalance is recognized as having too much or too little to do. So when we are thinking about, so an important element to occupational deprivation is that people have very little influence over their environment. With occupational marginalization, it's often the lack of autonomy and choice arises from social exclusion from an experience of autonomy rather than government regulations or structures that are in place. So factors like bias, stereotypes, misperceptions can often cause occupational marginalization. And this means that it is the result of invisible norms or expectations of behavior rather than formal laws, religious edicts, or institutional policies. So if we are thinking about occupational justice for students, our next question might be, what might prevent students from doing their chosen occupations? So for this, I'm hoping you can see a Microsoft Forms link on your screens. There is a QR code. And what I would like you to do is to get out your telephones and scan the QR code. And hopefully we will see our picture here change as people respond to the questions. So what I've highlighted here is that there are a number of structural factors which influence participation in student life. And what I would like you to do is to choose up to 5. Karen, can you just give me an indication of whether there is any difficulty in the chat? I see there's some questions popping up.
No, there's no difficulty as far as I can see. Thank you,
Okay.
Nicola.
All right. So while I'm waiting to see if our Microsoft form is going to do what it's supposed to do and highlight different things, I want to just highlight that there are a number of structural factors that can influence participation. So these might include access to health services, bursaries and loans, access to housing, education, transport, employment, recreational facilities, universal design and accessibility. And the 2 that you can't see here on the screen are the use of technology and communication and media. So I can see that yes, carry on.
Nicholas, sorry,
Yeah.
you can only select one at a time. It doesn't allow you to select multiple.
Okay. That's very strange. Okay, it doesn't matter. We will just carry on. Sometimes the technology doesn't work and we just have to continue. Otherwise, we will run out of time. So I can see there's a few coming up there now.
Yeah.
So we've got bursaries and loans and transport. So I think 3 people have managed to vote so far. Okay, so you can submit more than one if you go into it again. And now I can see we've got a 50-50 for bursaries, loans, transport, use of technology. Great. So I think we all learned in COVID how much of an impact access to technology and the use of technology could influence students' participation in the things that they need to do as a student. Being employed is a really interesting one. So, you know, some of our programs are really busy. And that creates very little time for students to be able to participate in outside employment. But we also know that many students do need to work. Okay, so I can see a nice shifts happening within our voting. So bursaries and loans, I think, is interesting now. So we can see the employment has gone down a little bit, and the bursaries and loans has gone up because we do recognize that students need to be financially supported when they are studying. Yeah, we've got a small proportion that have just kept now up in universal design and accessibility. So within the universal design and accessibility, I also want us to think about the use of language as a universal design aspect. So when our students are coming to study at university, we are welcoming students with a very diverse range of different languages. And one of the things that we need to think about in making our teaching and learning accessible to all students is how we use language within our programs. Okay, so I'm going to stop us on our voting screen there, and I'm going to move on to the next slide. So what you will see here is Studnic's framework for occupational justice, which is adapted here by Lewis and Lemieux. And what this framework shows us is that there are various structural and contextual factors that may become conditions for occupational justice or injustice. So these structural and contextual factors may then lead to occupational outcomes of justice or occupational outcomes of injustice. So going back, I know I've already commented on some of our students' experiences, but I just want to highlight a few things here within this framework. So when we think of Stellenbosch University students' experiences of occupational justice, we can clearly see that there are some examples of condition leading to justice or injustice. So if I start on the far left-hand side of the screen, national higher education policies, such as the provision of fee-free higher education for 90% of our students, has the potential to increase access to higher education for many youth in South Africa. However, the subsequent income support that is provided by NSFAS, which then becomes an instrument or program to promote justice, does not always, or it is intended to create equitable opportunities for students with low incomes to participate in university life. What we've seen, though, is at the same time, not getting your money on time may mean that students are not able to participate in simple activities like buying a cup of coffee with their friends, or lead to feelings of being marginalized because of the loss of autonomy over your financial situation. What I also like about this framework is that we can see that there's some opportunities for action, and I can already link these to life at Stellenbosch University. So, for example, Campus Health and the Centre for Student Support Counselling and Development provide health and community support to students. Our pantry project provides some support to students that experience food and hygiene product insecurity. Student residences are a really important space for providing equitable access to housing and also to recreational facilities for students. And then the transport we provide for our students between the Tygerberg and the Stellenbosch University campuses does mean that students are not excluded from learning opportunities due to their income. So now that we've heard about the concept of occupational justice, I want us to think about the concept of an occupational justice pedagogy. So social justice pedagogies are an established part of the health professions education landscape. And what I would like to propose today is an occupational justice pedagogy that concurrently promotes occupational rights and enables occupational justice for communities and higher education students at the same time. This means that students and members of society can make choices about what they do, have equitable opportunities for learning and doing, experience meaningful participation, and experience balance in the amount and variety of the things that they do. Although I'm going to use occupational therapy education as an example today, I think that an occupational justice pedagogy can be a transdisciplinary concept that is applicable to any professional group concerned with people's participation in their daily lives. The idea of being able to achieve forms of justice within and through higher education is not new. So in 2010, MacArthur highlighted that critical pedagogies are based on the belief that education and society are intrinsically linked, and that a fundamental purpose of education is to foster social justice. However, MacArthur also criticized what they saw as a lack of action or real change. So I'm now going to move on to introducing you to a project that I have been running in Bishop Lavis that aims to promote social participation and occupational justice for older people living in Bishop Lavis. So for the past 25 years, Stellenbosch University has worked in partnership with the City of Cape Town and the Department of Health and Wellness to provide healthcare services through the Bishop Lavis Rehabilitation Centre. Our Division of Occupational Therapy places third and final year students for clinical work at Bishop Lavis that is part of their mandated 1,000 hours of clinical service that's required by the Health Professions Council of South Africa. So rehabilitation services at Bishop Lavis are provided to children under 5 years and then adults with stroke, amputation, spinal cord injuries, hand injuries, and other health conditions. In 2006, so nearly 20 years ago now, service learning placements were added to the existing clinical placements at the Rehabilitation Centre. Placement within Bishop Lavis was among the first service learning sites that were developed by our division. And the idea with these learning sites or these service learning sites was to develop students' skills in primary healthcare service delivery, especially health promotion and preventing secondary complications, to apply knowledge and skills at role emerging placement sites. So the idea was to create sites where there was no occupational therapist working, but students were then identifying people's needs and creating an occupational therapy service to meet that need. We wanted to foster service context attitudes, which included citizenship, cultural responsibility, and cultural sensitivity. And we now refer to these service learning sites as community interaction blocks. So the shift to community interaction reflects a shift at the university towards acknowledging the influence, equality, and two-way communication that is needed between people and organizations involved in our projects. However, in 2022, I identified a need for some innovation in teaching and learning within our community interaction blocks. So the service learning model that we've been using within the division has changed very little since it was first described by Pretorius and Bester in a 2009 publication. And although the current community interaction blocks offer excellent opportunities for learning and growth, there are a number of potential areas for improvement and innovation. The first of these was that our historical service delivery to older people within our division has been to older people living with middle to high incomes. These have included private retirement villages and residential facilities for older people. A second problem pointing to the need for innovation in our service learning model is how little it's changed. So Santiago Ortiz in 2019 argued for critical service learning that moves the traditional focus of service learning on what the student learns to a focus instead on how all participants benefit from the service learning intervention. So taking a critical service learning stance also means moving from a deficit-orientated perspective to an asset orientation. In our placements, we use the logic model, and this requires students to identify and prioritize problems in the community, and then follow the steps of the logic model to identify objectives, actions, indicators, and outcomes to address these problems. I wasn't happy with identifying problems in the community because many of our communities come with many strengths and opportunities and diversities that we can build on instead of trying to find the problems. Santiago Ortiz also cautioned that universities must understand their colonial positionality as people who want to come into a community and change it or occupy it, to the point that the community is no longer recognizable. So this is a real concern within Bishop Lavis, which is a historically disadvantaged community or neighborhood in Cape Town. It was established as an area for forced removal of predominantly colored people. And many of the older adults that are living in Bishop Lavis now have been had first-hand or personal experience of forced removal. In addition, the dominant discourse of communities like Bishop Lavis as being violent and dangerous places hides the complexity and richness of the daily lives of the people who've made that community their home. So despite the occupational injustices that undoubtedly older people or people in Bishop Lavis experience, there are still many opportunities to choose valued occupations, find meaning, and to flourish. Another problem that we had within our curriculum is that we teach students about occupational justice from first year and extend that learning into second year, but there's actually quite a poor connection between the theory that they learn in first and second year and what they do in practice in third and fourth year. I was also concerned that there's a lack of published outcomes of our Stellenbosch University community interaction blocks. So although we have been running at least 8 sites or projects on 8 sites per year since 2006, We actually only have 3 publications that have come out of these service learning sites in our division. So that brings me to HESA Lane. So you already saw a very nice picture of our back to school party that we held at HESA Lane in an earlier slide, but I just want to introduce you to the service learning site. So in 2022, we were approached by Mthembu, which is a non-profit organization that is the social development arm of Communicare, which is a property services company. They wanted help with promoting social participation and meaningful activity for older people living in HESA Lane. So HESA Lane is a social housing development that is owned by Communicare and then managed by Mthembu. So as an organization, Mthembu aims to promote economic mobility, social cohesion, and support vulnerable tenants. At the start of our project, there were 35 tenants living at HESA Lane. They are all over the age of 55. They're independent living and are predominantly reliant on their SASSA pension. Each tenant has a single room in the building, which you see in the picture here. In their rooms, they have a single plug, a ceiling light, and a small sink. There are communal bathrooms, a kitchen, a lounge area, and a courtyard garden, which you can see in the picture here. And you can see that there is some attempts at growing food within the garden. So what I should actually also say about the kitchen facilities is so that there is a large kitchen. It has 4 plate stoves, but there's only 1 out of the 16 plates that is currently working. So most tenants now cook in their bedrooms and will perhaps go into the kitchen either to wash their dishes or to wash their clothing. And there are some communal washing lines outside in the courtyard as well. So the aim of our project at HESA Lane is to promote social participation and occupational justice for older people in Bishop Lavis. A number of researchers have written about occupational injustices that are experienced by older people. In an early study on this topic, De Tooy, Boning, and Van der Merwe explored ways of facilitating meaningful and culturally relevant experiences among Sesotho elders living in a residential home in central South Africa. In that study, they found that older people's living situation was dominated by occupational injustice, which led to experiences of boredom, loneliness, and helplessness. They suggested that creating opportunities for meaningful engagement and co-occupation, or doing with others, training staff, and environmental adaptation would lead to opportunities for doing, belonging, and becoming. These opportunities would then lead to experiences of occupational justice for older people. So I think what I just want to highlight here is this idea that our students may be experiencing or be at risk of occupational injustice, but so are the older people who we are working with in Bishop Lavis. So our project includes 4 different blocks of 6 weeks each. And these blocks run through then 24 weeks of the academic year. Students are placed on the site for 4 days a week, 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock. And then as supervisor and as part of my own clinical service delivery, I'm at HESA Lane every Thursday for the day. So in each of the 4 blocks, students have a slightly different focus. In phase 1, the students work to identify the needs of the community through a situational analysis, and then to prioritize those needs with the tenants. The student who comes in phase 2 has the responsibility for planning and preparing for adjustments to the project to meet these new emerging needs. In phase 3, the next student implements these adjustments, and in phase 4, the outcomes of the project are evaluated by the final student. So individual students are responsible for the day-to-day tasks of their block, but all of the students placed at the site during the year are involved in major decisions and planning, which takes place through tutorials and handovers at the middle and the end of each block. So this means that that one team of students is responsible for running the project throughout their final year. At the end of the year, we have a community interaction handover day where students and stakeholders are invited to presentations about each of the 8 projects that we run. So in the first year, students in their first block completed a comprehensive stakeholder analysis to determine the needs of the tenants. And what the tenants prioritized were health management, conflict between tenants, opportunities for physical exercise, and opportunities for social participation. In the planning and preparation phase, we planned a Wellness Wednesday as a weekly wellness or exercise opportunity, a social calendar. We attempted to create a social engagement committee, but that is a story for another day. And we gathered the resources that were needed for the project. The implementation phase for this first year that we were running the project was essentially what I like to call an activity extravaganza. So tenants were invited to physical exercise sessions and social activities, which included quiz day, table games, making collages, having a high tea, recipe sharing day, bingo, ball games, and a bring and buy. And all of these activities were things that the tenants themselves had identified as things that they wanted to do, or activities that the students thought would work well. So bingo was an interesting one because most of our tenants had never played bingo before, and it is now, I can say, a very firm favorite at Hastings Lane. In the evaluation phase, we found evidence that we had gained entry to this community. This was really important because I think coming back to what I said before about being conscious of our colonial position coming into Bishop Lavis as Stellenbosch University, I didn't really anticipate the pushback or the negative connotation that some of the tenants had towards the university. And they were actually very pleasantly surprised that we were so nice and helpful. So I think that really has been a good learning opportunity for me. 60% of our tenants have talked about implementing lifestyle changes as a result of the work that we're doing there. And we also found that both quality of life and level of disability were maintained over the course of the year. So this for me was a positive outcome because when working with an older population, we expect to see some decline over the time. We also saw that companionship, a sense of intimacy, and access to life spaces outside of tenants' own rooms all improved, which paved the way for improvement of the following year. So I'm going to quickly show you now a video of the outcome or highlights of the project from 2023.
Hi, sweetie, I changed everybody's life here.
Project has really made us become one. We've become one family.
Het project was volgens mij succesvol. Het was baie helpful voor ons mensen hier bij Hastings.
Ik heb het baie geniet. En ik is dankbaar vir Here wat ons die tyd opgeoffer het om vir ons 'n bietjie te kom aanmoedig hierso as ouer persone.
Het was iets goed.
It meant a lot to us and it means a lot to us also. See?
Goed en die samenwerking was baie betekend vir ons een en elke een. En ek hoop in ieder geval volg dat ons meermaal dit sal doen en meer mense sal uitkom om saam met ons deel te neem.
Beter than awesome.
Ek is tevrede met alles wat gebeur het.
We enjoyed it and we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I honestly say is that it was amazing. It's great. It's fantastic because we are loving it, and I personally, I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I hope you enjoyed that. It always makes me a little bit tearful when I watch that video. Karen, I can see your hand.
It's the time indication,
Karen
Nicola. I apologize.
Yes.
And other Karen is clapping. Sorry. Two Karens.
No, it's fine. I'm aware of the time. I'm nearly done. Okay, so very in brief, this year we continued with a new cycle of the project to prioritize new needs for tenants and to plan and prepare for some improvements. However, in May, one of the tenants found an advertisement for what appeared to be an auction of the Hazel Lane property. There was no communication from Communicare at all, and tenants were unsure what would happen to them. We had protest action outside Hazel Lane that was organized by local community organizations. And unfortunately, there was some concern that these protests would be hijacked by local criminal elements. So the students were pulled off the site for over a week while we waited to gain clarity on what would happen. So we very suddenly our focus of occupational justice shifting from participation to housing support. The simple intervention of reading the auction terms and conditions to confirm that existing lease agreements needed to be honoured by the new owners, and using my position of power as a professor at the university to get in contact with the CEO of Communicare were two things that we were able to do to dispel some of the immediate concerns of the tenants. But there's still very much uncertainty about what will happen when, how, and to who. So we have continued with our implementation block, and the student who is currently on the block there will be finishing next week, Friday, but the evaluation this year will be without a student on site, and instead I will be involved in that evaluation. So we come now to the final 2 seconds of my presentation, which is about evaluating an occupational justice pedagogy. So if we ask ourselves, did I promote choice, equitable opportunity, meaningful participation, and balance for both students and older people at Bishop Lavis this year? And last, I think the answer is yes. And I would like to go into more detail, but we haven't got enough time for that. But I just want to propose 6 principles for an occupational justice pedagogy in which we can promote occupational justice for students and for members of society at the same time. And with 15 minutes left, I will end there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Nicola. My goodness, I'm just thinking with what wealth of knowledge your students exit your course. And not just in terms of occupational therapy, occupational justice, etc., but also just in terms of being responsible social citizens, and being aware of all those invisible norms you've referred to that one doesn't normally think about. So thank you also for making us aware of those issues. Can I just ask, I haven't seen any questions or comments in the chat. Who would like to start off our question session? Yes, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, there are a number of things that I would like to ask and comment on, but I mean, I'm going to restrict myself to 2. For a university that talks about restitution, I think that it is important to ask oneself, and I think that there is maybe the subtext of what you have presented. What is the role of teaching and learning in restitution? And I think that the approach that you are talking about is important, particularly because there is no restitution unless one understands the relations of power in which we are ourselves involved by our mere existence. And I think that this is something that we are not seeing. That's a comment. My actual question is that now you're facing yourself a situation in which we usually stop when we actually should continue. Because you are now facing a political situation in which my personal view would be we need to take political action. So you need to you need not just to use your power to negotiate, but also to be part of the resistance to whatever it is happening. So how do you see this thing going? From a pedagogical point of view, because citizenship also is about participation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. It's an extremely difficult question, and I think the point that you're making about the time when you feel like you should stop is exactly the time that you should actually be continuing. I agree with you completely. And I think this is one of the difficulties I've had with not having a student placed at HSLA now for the final block, the evaluation block. Because at the time we made that decision, we really had no certainty about what the nature of the block would look like and our ability to provide a safe learning space for our students. So there was a lot of concern about enabling the students themselves to meet the learning outcomes that they needed to meet for the module. Without having a student at HSLA, on the other hand, it frees me up from the clinical supervision responsibility that I have. So I spend about 4 to 5 hours a week involved in the supervision of these students on site. And it frees up my time as the project lead to work with the tenants and identify what is the most appropriate action for us to be taking to support the tenants now with the sale of HSLA and taking the project into the future. So I think I'm very conscious of those kind of positionalities and also the resources that the university has that can help. So, for example, the law clinic for me is an excellent opportunity because all of these tenants, although their tenancy agreements need to be honoured, they all have different tenancy agreements. And so I think that support will need to happen on an individual level. My plan is to carry on with the project next year. But I think my plan is to have a backup in that if we cannot be operating safely at HSLA, then what we need to start thinking about is how can we use other resources in the Bishop Lavis community and perhaps meet the occupational needs of a broader population of older people that are living in Lavis. So, for example, one of my ideas was that instead of running our social activities at HSLA, that we do them in the Bishop Lavis Library 1 or 2 mornings a week. So that's where I'm thinking of heading. But we'll see. We're in a bit of a wait and see at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicola. Just sort of linking on to that, I was wondering how, if something like a social engagement committee that you've tried doesn't work, how does one make all these interventions then sustainable?
So that is a very good question. So I think sustainability comes from a range of different places. It's about the physical resources, it's about the human resources, it's about the physical space. So there really are a variety of different factors we need to take account in trying to achieve sustainability. What we realized from our assessments, so I shifted the focus of assessment this year to understanding tenants' problem-solving abilities and their level of participation. So we have particular outcome measures that we use in occupational therapy. And what I realized with those assessments is that we only have about 5 tenants who have the functional ability to lead activities, to problem solve, and also to resolve conflict in the home. So there's a lot of conflict in the home. So what we've been trying to do this year is work to supporting these tenants in the activities that they are already doing. So one of them is already the leader of the gardening project. The other is the house mother who's already taking a lead. Another one is the one tenant who voted, who stayed on the social engagement committee. And I think instead of having this committee as being a formal structure, which seemed to be a bit of a problem, we've made it more informal. So we now invite those 5 people to the meeting to plan the social calendar for the next 2 months, for example. The other aspect of sustainability that I've been working on is bringing the 3rd-year students who are placed at the rehab centre into Hazelane for 1 day a week of their clinical service delivery. And they have been running the social participation activities for this block. So it's also about looking at what are the... Oh, and also Wellness Wednesday is now run by one of the volunteers from the rehab centre. He comes through on a Wednesday and does exercise activities. And then the health promotion nurse from the Bishop Lavis Day Hospital has been coming in to do health talks. So it really has been about looking at what are the other human resources we have available and how can we action them for the sustainability of the project.
Thank you.
And I think maybe what I should also say is that there are some signs of sustainability emerging. So we are only there for 24 weeks of the year, and we had we had about 7 weeks over the examination and vacation period, and there were activities that ran without us being there. They didn't quite run according to the plan that the students had set up, but they definitely did run anyway. So at least some of our focus now needs to shift towards supporting the house mother and the amazing efforts she does. So what I should say is that Mrs. Brown, who is the house mother at Hazelane, is a tenant who's been voted as the connection between Hazelane and Communicare, and she is absolutely amazing. She is a force to be reckoned with. She has connections with a gazillion NPOs in the area, and she brings a lot of outside people in to do volunteer work and special days for Mother's Day and Women's Day and Christmas, and you name it, they've got people coming in. So we really are also working at supporting the existing resources that we have there.
Yes, wonderful. Colleagues, we've still got a few minutes. Any more questions or comments?
I think if I can ask the audience a question, I think when I was preparing this presentation, this idea of an occupational justice pedagogy that promotes occupational justice for students and society at the same time is not something that is written about anywhere in the literature. And so I think that the feedback that I would like as champions for teaching and learning at this university that are in the audience, is this something that I should be taking forward? Do I need to write it up as a theoretical paper? Do I just continue doing what I'm doing? That's what I would like to hear. Prof.
My namesake, Karen.
Right. I was going to say, I always the one to talk because I have a lot to say. Nicola won, but then I wait for everyone else and then they're silent and then I come in. First of all, I was going to say, I mean, as you were going through this, we are working in this space in engineering education at a national level. And although we broadly talk about social justice as a kind of a paradigm from which we're working and the uncomfortable tensions between that and the other stuff we find ourselves in, labor market orientated, economic, corporatist, technicist, managerialist stuff, standard swear word. That tension plays itself out very differently in spaces where we're talking about large class, the whole scaling issue. And in my now 2 decades in the space, the lack of vision to see the kinds of resources one needs, the kinds of stakeholders one needs to engage in the space, and the resources one needs to put in place to enable the kind of pedagogy you're talking about. So one, yes, please write it up. There'll be a lot of people in this audience who'd be happy to be a critical friend, you know, and guide you. The other thing is, you know, you've called it an occupational justice pedagogy, and I like the play on words in terms of the term you're using, and yet the activity systems we find ourselves in which we are engaging in kinds of occupation. And it would speak more broadly to obviously across the board. I mean, Liz knows we did the research in the background on how are people engaging in enabling these kinds of spaces for learning, not just in an educational space, but at a, you know, social level. So to answer your question, yes, please write it up. And 2, we'll be happy to support you in this. And 3, I mean, let's take this further, but really also, yes, the powers that be need to see that we're talking about a different way of thinking about what it is that our mandate really is, especially in our country. I see Susan's got her hand up. There we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Yes. Susan, I can't see your hand, but please go ahead.
Okay, I'll give it a try. I put on my camera, but I'm also at the faculty where Nicola is, and I have been dropped off the session a couple of times, so there's definitely something wrong with the internet. Yeah, and I mean, just really picking up on what Karen said, you know, great work, Nicola. We've spoken about your work many times, and it's, yeah, I also get the tear in my eye, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But absolutely that it must be written up. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that, apart from all the other reasons that might be more obvious, is that we don't have language to talk about these things. So we keep on saying we need more conversations, we need more dialogue. But at an academic level, we are still struggling with the terminology, with the nomenclature, with the understandings. And I mean, something like social justice is never going to get pinned down to one idea, because it's absolutely rooted in our own histories and who we are and so on and so forth. But if we can start mapping the terrain and putting it out there in a scholarly way, then we give one another at least tools with which we can embark on meaningful dialogue. So if for no other reason, please do it for that reason.
Yeah, and I think, Susan, thank you very much for that. I think what you've said has just made me come back to this slide, is that these words about choice, opportunity, meaningful participation, and balance are easy words. They're not concepts that we need to argue about what it means. So I think, yes, they are a really good starting point for addressing some of the needs of our students, and even identifying or recognizing what those needs are. Thank you.
Nicola, unfortunately, with your fellowship, you have the opportunity to work on such a publication, or more than one. So I'm glad you've got that opportunity to make your work more known.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I think we need to close here. It's just after 2, and I know people have got other meetings and class, etc. Prof Liz, can I just hand over to you again?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nicola. It was really, really nice and very interesting. I mean, on the one hand, I agree with Susan that we do not have the vocabulary. On the other hand, I think that some vocabularies have been there for a while, but we are too scared to use them. So I really would like to sort of enthusiastically support your work. And the second thing is that while all universities, and ours not least, talk about the notion of citizenship, they seem to be talking about the notion of citizenship that doesn't have politics attached to it. And I just think that anybody who is here from the social sciences will know that there is no citizenship without politics, unless you live in a totally liberal system. So I think that what you're doing is showing that. And I really thank you for that. And I truly hope that the people who are interested can contact you and follow up the conversation. I hope that you publish on this thing. I think the debate is important. And I wish further presentations will take us a bit closer to a notion of education that is transformative in action and not in theory. So thank you very much. I don't know that I have to say something. Oh, yes. Another thing that I have to say, the announcement of the next one, it is 24th of October, and my friend, Professor Dennis Francis, will be talking presumably about sexuality and education or something of the sort. So thank you all, and I enjoy myself so I can come again. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Nicola and Prof Liz, for that. Go well, everybody, and I hope to see you all and more on the 24th of October.
Well done, Nicola.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you very much. That was just as inspirational as I thought it would be. So thank you, Nicola.
Tell you what, like you think that you don't have enough to say, and then you realize that you actually have like loads of stuff you can talk about. It's very funny.
I hated having to tell you about the time because it was fascinating listening to you, and I just thought, I don't want to interrupt you, but I really just wanted there to be enough time for discussion.
I know. But this is so I was very conscious of the time, but I hadn't got through enough of the slides yet. So
I understand. Oh,
so I was like,
really
how much of my 20 minutes of discussion time can I eat into it? But no, thank you.
I know the feeling, not to worry. No, it was really, I just, it makes one quite excited about doing, or just becoming involved in projects that could, it's not just people's living circumstances, but it's that lack of autonomy and choice that you spoke of in the beginning. It really, that really touched me, and it just makes one think about what is it that you can do. On an informal, voluntary basis.
What's been interesting is the students, they've been tracking how many of the tenants come to different activities, and there's been this kind of this tension about that not everybody's coming, and every block I have to say to the students, but what we are doing is enabling choice and opportunity. So if people choose not to come, that is their choice. It's an active choice. So you can, as long as you make sure that they're aware that the activity is happening, you make them feel welcome, you invite the ones that don't attend personally, you provide some support for people that need it. We can do all those things, but actually there's power in being able to say there's this thing going on and I don't want to go. Or I do want to go, and it's great. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's no good giving people a choice on the one hand, on the other hand, taking away the choice by saying you have to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's a very special group of tenants, and I think what this fellowship has enabled me to see is the value of what we're doing, because it feels like this is just like everyday practice for me.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about it, you realize that it's more than what it is, or that feels.
It's a lot more. It's a lot more. Are there similar projects at other universities in the Western Cape?
Most of all of the occupational therapy programs have got some kind of community engagement stuff going on.
Okay.
The way that we operationalize it is slightly different depending on the university. But if I say to you that this project at Bishop Lavis is one of 8 projects that the division runs. So there's 7 other things that we're doing that have been running for some of them for 10 or 15 years.
And people just don't know about it.
And people don't know about it. So we do have I should have actually said today that we've got a colloquium planned for September, that focuses on these community interaction projects. So we planned the Juanita Bester, who was our clinical work coordinator, who kind of spearheaded the development of these projects. She retired this year after 30 plus years of service to the university. So we're holding the colloquium in her honor as a not as a retirement present, but as a a celebration of her work. And yeah, and we each of us that are running a project will be presenting something on the project on the day. So yeah, the projects are fabulous, and since I've been in the division, it's been this question of how do we get the message out there? How do we publish on what we're doing? How do we? Because people get so stuck in the treadmill of just trying to keep going. Yeah. But yeah. Thank you very much. And
go and have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine.
No, I've got to go get ready now. I've got a big workshop happening tomorrow. So
okay.
Yeah, that I'm co-facilitating with my international colleagues. So we've had a very busy week of scientific visit and writing and stuff. And now we've got a workshop that we're running tomorrow. So I've just got to get ready for that. And then I will have a glass of wine.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. I'm sure it's going to be a great success, Nicola,
Thanks.
knowing you.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be good. Thanks, Karen.
Good. Thank you too very much.
Okay.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.